Welcome to Modeling Mastery, the podcast where we explore the art and science of software design. I'm Hex.
And I'm Byte. In our last set of episodes, we explored the foundational strategic concepts of domains, subdomains, and bounded contexts. Now we're diving into Chapter 3, Context Maps.
This chapter is critical. It moves from the conceptual understanding of boundaries to the practical act of mapping them. A context map is a tool for visualizing the relationships between different parts of a complex system. It's about understanding the project's terrain.
Exactly. It's not just a technical diagram, it's a communication tool. This chapter shows how a team can use context mapping to understand the problems they've created, see the boundaries between different models, and figure out how they are or should be integrated. It's a powerful technique for getting a handle on a complex enterprise landscape.
So let's explore why this mapping is so essential.
But in our last chapter, we established the importance of bounded contexts, creating explicit linguistic boundaries around our domain models. But in any real enterprise, these contexts don't exist in a vacuum. They have to interact.
Right, and that's where things can get messy. Teams build their models, but if they don't have a clear understanding of how those models relate to the other systems around them, they're flying blind. This is precisely the problem that a context map is designed to solve.
Let's be very clear about what we mean. When we say map, many developers might think of a complex system architecture diagram full of servers and databases. That's not what this is.
Not at all. A context map is simpler, and I'd argue more powerful for a development team. At its core, it's a drawing that shows the various bounded contexts in an enterprise and, crucially, the relationships between them. It's about understanding the organizational and technical dynamics between the teams responsible for those contexts.
That organizational aspect is key. The map isn't just about code, it's about people and how they collaborate. For instance, if your team depends on an API from another team, the map forces you to define that relationship. Are you a customer to their supplier team where you can negotiate for features? Or are you a conformist, forced to slavishly adhere to their model no matter how inconvenient it is?
That's a perfect example. Making that relationship explicit on a map is a huge step. Imagine a team assuming they have a customer-supplier relationship, but the upstream team has no real motivation to help them. Without a map to facilitate that conversation, the downstream team might not discover this misalignment until late in the project, which could cause major delays or even failure.
The map becomes a catalyst for communication. It forces those critical conversations to happen early. When the fictitious SaaSOvation team in the book first started, they didn't use a context map. They were so focused on the tactical patterns inside their model that they missed the big picture and ended up with a tangled mess.
It's a classic mistake. They blended security concepts with collaboration concepts because they didn't have a map showing that these were two separate bounded contexts with a specific integration point. Drawing a map, even a simple one on a whiteboard, would have forced them to see those boundaries. The map visualizes the terrain, warts and all. You map what is, not what you wish it would be.
And it highlights areas of impurity. Their first map showed this weird, leaky boundary between their core collaboration model and the security concepts, a place where foreign ideas were migrating back and forth and causing confusion. A map makes those problems impossible to ignore.
So, for a developer listening to this, the first step on any new DDD effort, even a small one, should be to grab a marker and start drawing. What are the systems we touch? What are the models in play? Where are the boundaries? Who owns them? And what kind of relationship do we have with them?
It doesn't have to be formal. A hand-drawing diagram on a team room wall that everyone can see and discuss is far more valuable than a perfect digital diagram buried in a wiki. It's a living document that captures the team's understanding of their project's landscape.
Exactly. It's the ultimate tool for strategic design. It gives you the high-level view you need to make smart decisions before you get lost in the details.
A perfect summary. Before we can label specific relationships, we need to understand the fundamental flow of influence. Let's talk about the concepts of upstream and downstream.
This is a great starting point because it's so intuitive. The book uses the analogy of a river, which I love. Changes made in an upstream context flow down and affect the downstream contexts. If an upstream team changes its API, the downstream team has to react. But the reverse isn't necessarily true. A change in a downstream system rarely impacts the upstream one.
A perfect analogy. It immediately visualizes the power dynamic. The upstream team has influence, whether they intend to or not. Understanding this flow is the first step in strategic design. Once we see this, we can start to define the nature of those connections. Let's start with the most highly collaborative patterns.
Right. The ideal scenario is a partnership. This is when two teams in different bounded contexts will succeed or fail together. Their fates are intertwined. This means they can't just throw things over the wall. They have to coordinate their planning and development closely.
This is a high-investment relationship. It requires a huge amount of communication. If one team needs a feature from the other, they have to schedule their work for the same release cycle. It's a true symbiotic relationship, but it's also rare because that level of coordination is difficult to maintain.
An even more intimate and riskier relationship is the shared kernel. This is where two teams explicitly agree to share a small subset of the domain model and the associated code. It's a designated common piece of their models that they both depend on.
The key word there is small. The benefit is that you reduce duplication, but the cost is extremely tight coupling. Any change to that shared kernel has to be negotiated and agreed upon by both teams. It requires a continuous integration process just for the kernel to ensure the teams stay aligned. It's a powerful pattern, but dangerous if the kernel is allowed to grow.
Both of those are pretty intense. A much more common and pragmatic pattern for that upstream-downstream dynamic is the customer-supplier relationship. This is where the downstream team acts as the customer, and the upstream team is the supplier. The downstream team has real influence. Their priorities are factored into the upstream team's planning.
This formalizes the relationship. It's not just hope. The teams negotiate and budget for the downstream requirements, so everyone understands the commitment and the schedule. The downstream customer can be confident they'll get what they need, and the upstream supplier knows what they're expected to deliver.
This is one of the most important things to get right on a context map. You need to know if you're a priority customer or just one of many consumers. The SaaSOvation team in the book establishes customer-supplier relationships between its internal teams, ensuring that one team won't be allowed to block another. This positive organizational relationship is critical for their success.
And that's the power of the map. It forces you to define these terms. Are we in a partnership? Do we have a shared kernel? Are we in a customer-supplier relationship? Answering these questions clarifies everyone's role and responsibilities.
Exactly. So we've covered the happy path patterns, the ones built on healthy collaboration. But what happens when that collaboration isn't there?
That leads us to the more defensive patterns. In our next episode, we'll discuss what happens when the downstream team is helpless, leading to patterns like Conformist and the anti-corruption layer.
The patterns you need when things get difficult.
In our last discussion, we explored the collaborative relationships on a context map, such as partnership and customer-supplier, which are built on strong inter-team communication.
That's the ideal, Hex. But we both know that's not always the reality. Sometimes you have to integrate with a system where the other team has no motivation to help you. This leads to the more defensive patterns.
Let's start with the position of least power. This is the conformist relationship. What happens here?
As a downstream team, you're a conformist when you're helpless. The upstream team provides an API, and that's it. You have no influence to request changes that would make your life easier. So, to avoid the complexity of translating their model, your team gives up and just adopts the upstream model's language and concepts.
This is a dangerous path. If the upstream model is poorly designed or doesn't align with your own ubiquitous language, conforming to it means you are actively polluting your own bounded context. Your model becomes a confusing mix of your own concepts and the foreign concepts you are forced to adopt.
It's a recipe for a mess. This is why the strategic antidote to the situation is one of the most powerful and important patterns in all of DDD, the Anticorruption layer, or ACL.
An excellent name, as it does exactly what it says. An anti-corruption layer is a defensive perimeter that the downstream team builds to protect the integrity of its own model. It's a dedicated translation layer that sits on the boundary between the two contexts.
Think of it like a universal power adapter you'd use when traveling. The foreign system provides its current in a specific format, and the ACL's job is to translate that into a format your own system can understand, and vice versa. The core of your model never has to know about the messy details of the foreign system.
Let's use the SaaSOvation example from the book. The downstream agile project management context needs concepts like product owner and team member. But the upstream identity and access context only knows about a generic user and role. The ACL is the component that makes that translation. It asks the upstream system, is this user in the Scrum product owner role? And if so, it creates a clean product owner object for its own model.
This is absolutely essential when you're forced to integrate with what the book calls a big ball of mud, a large, messy legacy system with tangled models and inconsistent boundaries. You don't let that mud leak into your pristine new bounded context. Your ACL is the shield that keeps your model pure.
Now, the upstream team can make the ACL's job much easier. If they provide an open host service, which is a well-defined and stable API, and a published language, which is a well-documented shared data format like JSON or XML, it gives the ACL a clear and stable contract to work against.
Exactly. The SaaSOvation teams agree to this. The upstream contexts provide an open host service with a published language, OHSPL, and the downstream context build an anti-corruption layer to consume it. It's a clean, decoupled, and professional way to integrate.
So the key lesson is this. When faced with a difficult integration, don't become a conformist and corrupt your model. Instead, invest the effort to build an anti-corruption layer. It's a strategic investment that pays huge dividends in model purity and long-term maintainability.
A powerful defense.
Indeed. In our final episode on this chapter, we'll put all these patterns together and look at what a complete multi-context map for the SaaSOvation project looks like.
Sounds great. Thanks, Hex.
Over the last few episodes, we've explored the theory behind context maps, why we need them, and the different relationship patterns we can use to describe how our systems interact.
That's right. We've covered everything from collaborative patterns like Customer-Supplier to defensive ones like the anti-corruption layer. Now, let's put it all into practice and analyze the final context map for the SaaSOvation project, as shown in the book.
An excellent idea. It's a perfect example of how these concepts come together to tell a story. Byte, can you describe the layout of the map for us?
Absolutely. It's a clean and clear diagram. At the very top, we have the identity and access context. Positioned below it is the collaboration context. And at the bottom, clearly marked as downstream from both, is the new core domain, the agile project management context. The book even draws a bold, thick line around the core domain to visually emphasize its importance.
That visual hierarchy is intentional. The identity and access context is furthest upstream. Its influence flows down to the other two. The collaboration context is also upstream of the Agile PM context. The map uses simple U for upstream and D for downstream labels on the connectors to make this flow of influence explicit.
And when we look at those connectors, we see the specific integration patterns spelled out. The upstream contexts, identity and access and collaboration, are both labeled with OHS/PL. This tells us that they are providing an open host service with a published language. They are behaving as good suppliers, offering a stable and well-documented API for consumers.
And in response, the downstream contexts are labeled with ACL,
The Agile PM context is building an anti-corruption layer to protect itself from both upstream services. This is a sign of a mature design team. They are not becoming conformists. They are building a translation layer to protect the purity of their own ubiquitous language.
This is what makes the map so powerful. In a single picture, it tells a developer everything they need to know about the strategic landscape. If I'm new to the Projectivation team, I can see that our core domain is the Agile PM context. I see that we depend on 2 upstream services. I know that we protect our model from those services using an ACL, and that they provide a stable API for us to consume. The map also documents that they're in a customer-supplier relationship, so there's a formal process for requesting changes.
Precisely. The map is a strategic plan and a communication tool rolled into one. It captures the existing terrain and provides a guide for future decisions. It moves the conversation from abstract architectural ideas to a concrete, shared understanding that the entire team, developers and business experts alike, can point to and discuss.
It's the perfect example of a simple tool having a profound impact. You're not just drawing boxes and lines, you're documenting the social and technical contracts between teams.
And that is the essence of strategic design. That brings us to the end of our exploration of Chapter 3. We've seen why a context map is essential, we've defined the key relationship patterns, and we've analyzed a complete map in action.
It was a great discussion. Next up, we'll be tackling Chapter 4, Architecture. We'll see how these well-bounded models we've designed can fit into various architectural styles, from layers and hexagonal to event-driven systems. Thanks everyone for listening.